Okay, so still playing Clippers, and it's kind of an observation of the game. It feels like it plays very quickly in terms of laying down pieces. You wouldn't want to spend a lot of time thinking, etc. But it actually stretches out a little too long for the type of speedy game play that it has. I've found that games that have this much, I don't know, sort of excitement and intensity to them. I can handle one or two short ones in a day, but this game is beginning to push the limit on this. It feels like it drags a little too long for such quick-paced games. All right, let's look at what happened in terms of the Phase 1 choices. The U.S. went with the 5 times thing. The feeling being control of where things go is more important, and 5 plays at once gives you a lot of control. The 3 times is kind of nice too, but you get no payoffs from that. So it would be takeable, there's no question, but it's kind of pleasing to get that extra money and 1 extra boat lay. It doesn't seem like it's worth the cost. And I'm pretty sure these have to be the French. The Dutch have kind of an orange in their flag rather than a red, and this looks redder, even if the blue's funny. They chose to place a port. This port is guaranteed to be hit by 2 things. It's an 8-point port. They took the last space in that. They think that was well worth the action and better than the 2 times cost. Now the next 3 players took the 2 times cost. Again, for $2 you almost are guaranteed to make that back. You get the extra plays as well, which gives you more power, so it's still pleasing. The Germans took the black boat though, with the intention of hooking up a fate, and at this point, well, our French are kind of unhappy that they can't get an extra fleet into Fiji, but that's okay. And I think everybody else pretty much normal thinking here. Let's go forward. Okay, and for growth, I can't remember the pacing very much of everything that happened, but as you can see, a lot of the lines are beginning to really have reached their limit. At this point, white, green, and black, all their pieces are gone. I've moved the boats into the bag so they wouldn't confuse me. But what key salients have we kind of seen? Well, I think the U.S. drove things down into the Solomons for their own advantage. That was their key, and they may have also pushed for some money off of some other line, like possibly the purple one. The French, what did they try to do? They pushed down here. The Germans did their branch off up to a fate, and then what we see is the Brits beginning to shove the purple line, which is also almost out of pieces at this point. They're down to 3 towards New Guinea to make sure they get that double value. That helps France too, but that's cool, It's okay to work with people. It's not okay to help. It's not necessarily a good idea to help people who are gaining more than you, but if you're splitting the area, hey, what the heck. All right, on to the second play. The U.S. has already used its 5 times, so it won't get to go again. Okay, at the end of the turn here, French only got a 1-place play. They connected up New Guinea. The Japanese grabbed cheap points and killed purple off by going up to Manahiti. Germans started moving the blue line. Why? They want to branch the red line. They want to branch it so that they have a chance of getting up to Nauru. They'd like to get a 3rd company into there. Thus, using up blue line pieces is the correct thing to do at this time. They already bought 1 branch this last turn, or this turn, so they can't do that again. So now they're going to see what they can accomplish using the blue line here. Let's see what else we got. We have well, the continuation of that blue line with the English pushing forward. Again, taking a couple of bucks is worth more than heading in a direction that seems guaranteed to happen and not terribly valuable. Beyond Funafuti, well, they could slide down to Santa Cruz and then down to New Guinea. So if they could manage that, it would be appealing. But, well, expanding the blue and getting a couple bucks was also appealing. Alright, so the anchor moves and all the cards go back. So a rush on ports comes on this phase. Nobody bought a single card. Everybody expanded into these valuable ports. Basically, it was a, hey look, those are worth $8, 8 victory points at the least. Some of them, there was still a 16 or 2 left, I think, at least one. And there's the opportunity to increase that. And you're just not going to do that with your turnover with the cards. The question is, could you control getting something of value to your own port? So, for example, the U.S., could they make sure the red line makes it down into the Solomons? Because that would be worth as much. Well, it seemed like giving the points up to someone else was worse, so there was the demand to get them out. And there are a lot of port counters out there. Germans have a whole handful of these sitting here. They've got 4 of them. The Brits have 4 of them that they haven't played yet. So getting those extra port counters out is a very valuable exercise at this point. I think maybe more valuable than trying to, hook up multiple times in some cases. Alright, well, let's start with our French. And everybody's just going to get one play. And what we see, some of the players trying to push the blue line. And in particular, these have been people who had possession here. The red line, the Germans, they bought a clipper and busted out this way. They want to get up to get to Nauru. There's no other way there right now. Whereas, say, the Americans, well, they want to push this way so they can get to the Solomon Islands. A lot of the other people are just kind of playing to play. They don't have anything else to do. They must play. This was something my wife really disliked about the game. I got to do something, but I don't want to do it. Well, tough. Over, something that doesn't necessarily help me, and now I've got to try to figure out something that's not going to help you as well. We did see some, though. For example, the English managed to get $2 for getting to Kirimati. Going to go around once more. Here, a further advancement of that same, the English and the Americans pushing this forward. Now, they have divergent ends. The English want to slip down to Santa Cruz and New Guinea, whereas the Americans want to drop down to the Solomons. Of course, the Solomons isn't terrible for the English. If the Americans push that way, well, the English can still make it to New Guinea. But they would rather avoid giving points to other people for going through the Solomons. Likewise, we've got... So in that particular case, the Americans had a kind of tricky decision, which was, this was the piece they played. They took $1 for it to push things forward, but now the English are going to get the decision of which way to go. Disadvantage, obviously. You didn't want to play that. If it were a 2-player game, it wouldn't have happened. But in a 5-player game with England sitting on his left, there's not really anything he can do. Somebody's going to take that and take the money for it. Alright, I guess that's it, and we push the anchor forward and keep going. So again, a flurry of port placements, and everybody put a port down. Now at this point, the French player is out of ports. So if he wants to move ports to gain advantages on any of these, and that's less and less valuable as we go into the game, because you'll be moving, say, from a 3 that he's got up here that's got 2 companies to it, to what, maybe a 5, because now all the 6s are mostly taken up. In the 2-player game, there wasn't this real clutter of ports. It's kind of a shame. I wish you could have less tokens per port. That might be an interesting variation to the game, because it definitely has a different feel into where you're really just dominating those ending spaceports, and it's worth moving a lot of stuff. Here, I don't know if it's worth moving all that much stuff, which means what you do earlier in the game, in terms of getting even your low-valued ports hooked up, passed through by multiple companies, might be of some importance. Anyway, nobody bought a brancher either, so we're pretty much at, everybody's going to put down one piece and see if anything special happens. So first time around, the Japanese, for example, branched this down with the hope of getting to Fiji, actually. Solomon Islands? It's tough to tell because you don't know who's in the lead, really. It's not clear, it's not obvious, and I don't want to sit back and do a lot of point counting at any point in a game. I don't like playing a game that way. It's kind of disturbing when somebody points out, oh, so-and-so's in the lead, and then everybody starts counting and trying to figure out who really is and whatever. In this case, certainly playing solitaire for the first time, I'm more exploring, and there's no clear indication to me from the game itself who's in the lead, but it seems to me that allowing, say, a third company into a place where one country has two presence, even if you have one, it's a little iffy when maybe you have a way to a singular. It just seems to me that there's more of an advantage being gained by the U.S. here than the risk of getting to Fiji instead. But who knows? Trying to aim this way might end up with the Red Fleet going down to New Guinea, which would be terrible. So something that Japan is kind of taking the risk on. Now, what we're seeing elsewhere, though, is again this. Here, you can make a buck if you complete this line. People have to make plays. The U.S. didn't want to hook this up because in doing so, what happens? Well, or no, it was the French who didn't want to hook this up. In doing so, there's almost no chance that it's going to go to Australia. But if they leave it alone, someone else may hook it up for that buck, and maybe it goes to them. I don't think it's going to happen. I think probably Japan will hook it up, figuring it's going to be more likely to hit two of their areas if it doesn't go to Australia. So they want to particularly prevent that. But, and so now that decision costs France a buck. They could have made the buck there, and they chose not to, instead pushing the red line down with hopes that that could help them maybe making it to New Guinea. Who knows? All right, second time around. And the Germans were able to sail the blue line up to a Fate. Now, if Fate's blocked, there's no way out of there. So that blue is not going to be able to be extended unless somebody buys one of these blue boats here. There's a lot of blue tiles. If nobody does that, that could shorten the game significantly. Red's been being driven down by a course of operations, but basically the French made the choice to push it in this direction, hoping to get to New Guinea. Other people have other plans, of course. So I could definitely see, for example, the Japanese trying to shove it down there, which was their goal. The U.S. trying to push it back up north so it can make another shot at Solomon Islands. And yes, you can create big loops in your routes. And now we move it down where Germany's going to go first, and I'll load this up.